So there are a lot of, I would say, residency options at the moment
Yes.
that would not require a lot of investments.
Okay.
And these would be the D7 visa, the D2 visa, and the D8, which is the digital nomad visas. And there will be a lot of other options as well as we dive in, depending on what the clients would need and
Yes.
what are their profile and stuff like that.
Okay. So that's helpful. So you say it's a lower threshold in terms of
Absolutely.
investment. Are we still looking at an investment-based visa across the D7, D2, D8?
Well, for example, on D7 visa, I would not say that there is a requirement of investment. There is a requirement of showing that you have income, you have a passive income,
Okay.
right? So you have to show at least a minimum, as of this year, there's a minimum requirement of wage of 820 euros per month.
Fantastic.
So you have to show that on your bank statement
Yeah.
and provide those documents to the authorities to
Super.
be eligible to apply.
Okay, Jim. So that's great. So that's D7. You mentioned the word passive income. So can you broaden that a little bit in terms of what you mean by passive? So I'm assuming it's not an employment-based visa.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would an income coming from probably your fixed deposits, your income from properties, for
Yeah.
example. Anything that is really passive. It doesn't
Okay.
have to be, the requirement is not that you are employed and you
Yes.
get that money from
Yes, yes.
from the employment. It's so basically D7 visa is also called a retirement visa.
Okay.
You see,
That
so
helps. Yeah.
you can also show documents that show that you are officially retired. I would say.
Fantastic.
So aside from that, obviously the proof of the passive income documents, like the
Bank statements,
and all those
investment
transfers and-
returns.
yes, correct.
Okay, so we can prove that pretty easily in terms of paper trail,
Mm-hmm.
which makes sense. Passive being rental yield,
Yes.
investment thresholds.
Yes.
If you're drawing a pension as a retiree, can that count towards?
Yes. For
Okay,
sure.
so it really does cater to the retired individual.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's any non-Portugal employment-based or company dividends or things like that, I assume that wouldn't be passive. That's still employment-based.
Yes, but I based on the profile of the client, we would offer him a different way. So this is not called a D7 visa
Yes.
anymore. He can go through a different route, which is the digital nomad visa.
Okay,
Yeah.
fantastic. So you mentioned that. Let's stay on D7 for a second here.
Mm-hmm.
So correct me if I'm wrong. Again, you would know better than I do. The D7 for the golden visa, we're essentially looking at 7 days a year over the
Stay
5
requirement.
years to qualify for citizenship or PR initially.
Yes.
Does the D7 follow the similar line in terms of residence requirements?
There is a residency requirement, physical
Yeah.
stay requirement,
Okay.
but it's longer than the golden visa. So
Makes sense.
basically, you have to stay consecutively 6 months per year, or
Okay.
if it's not consecutive, then it should be 8 months per year.
Fantastic. Okay, so it really is for someone that's looking to take up physical residence in Portugal.
And then
Unlike,
we're willing to relocate with the family as well.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
thing that you asked about the physical stay requirement. It's also important to know about the other requirements or other eligibility requirements.
Yep.
People would ask, like, can I bring my family? Can I bring
Sure.
my spouse? Can I bring my kids? Obviously you can.
Yes.
But the threshold or the amount of money that you have to show on your bank account will also increase.
I see.
Yeah. So it's 820
For a
euros
single
per
applicant.
month for a single applicant.
Yeah.
But if you add dependents like your spouse, your children, then it will also increase.
Okay, that makes sense. And I assume that's a percentage increase.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We are between 20 to 30%
Okay. And
increase. Yeah.
can you speak to how broad that dependent base is in terms of who can be included? I would assume a spouse,
Yeah. The spouse can be included.
children.
Your children can be included, even though they're 18 above and they're adult, for as
Okay.
long as they're financially dependent
Okay.
on the main applicant.
Which speaks to the golden visa
yes,
criteria
it's
as well.
the same. Yeah.
Okay, so that's D7. That's a passive income based residence. For the D7, what is the granting period? So you get how many years up front, for example?
So you get the visa for 2 years,
Okay.
and then it is renewable, provided that you still provide those same requirements that you did in the first time you applied for it, like all the bank statement, the
Okay.
proof that you have a passive income,
Yeah.
and the other important things.
Okay, so 2 years and then extendable from within Portugal, I'm assuming.
Absolutely. So it is renewable, and then it will give you another 3 years validity.
Good.
And then by the end of that year, which is now 2 + 3 is 5 years,
Yes.
then you'll be eligible to apply for the citizenship.
Fantastic.
Yes.
And the language...
Provided, obviously, that you have the residency, the physical stay
Sure,
requirement.
sure.
Yeah? That
Which
you
is
have
that
fulfilled
6 month, or if you break it down into days, I assume it would be 183 days a year, roughly.
Yes. Also, Sheldon, since we're talking about, the residency and all those other things, a lot of people would ask me,
Yes.
or you would also probably would have heard this question, if I'm applying for a D7 visa because it's a retirement visa, can I work in Portugal?
Good question, yeah. That's going to
Yeah.
come up.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, no, you can't because of a retirement visa. But it's a good thing that I was able to meet our lawyers in Portugal when I visited a few weeks ago. And it was
Fantastic.
explained to me or to the team that,
Yes.
yes, they can work, even though
Wow.
they have a retirement visa. It's
So the main applicant can work? Or
Yes, all of the dependents. Obviously, if they're
Really?
if they're eligible to work, then yes, they can.
Okay, so
With
essentially...
the retirement visa.
So what you're saying is you could subsidize your passive income with employment income in Portugal.
Not
If-
really when you're renewing the visa, though. But when
Yeah.
since you're moving to Portugal, and obviously if you want to add more income to your financials, then it's possible. It's
Okay.
not like you're not restricted not to work.
Interesting. So if you were, for argument's sake, to get a job offer
Yeah,
from a Portuguese-based employer while on the D7, you could take that job offer up.
absolutely.
Well, okay, I didn't know that. That's quite unique.
It
Thanks,
is,
Jim.
it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
I mean, when I heard about this news, I was really like, because a lot of people would, even though they're having a passive income,
Yes.
if I would turn 60 or 65, I would still want to work. You
Sure,
know?
sure.
I still want to have
Absolutely.
the feeling of going to office or doing
Yeah,
some
yeah,
few
yeah.
things, So
Yeah.
it's well, not for everyone though, but it's a good thing to know that they can still work with their retirement.
It is a good thing. It is a
Yeah.
good thing. And I think it creates a safety net because you're in a new country and trying to integrate by working makes it easier sometimes. So
Absolutely.
that's great. Okay, so we see a broad range of applicants, right? I mean, I look at the business migration side of things and we see applicants as old as, I think the oldest business migration applicant we've done was early 80s. So there's not really a frowned upon stance on the age restriction in terms of employment. So that's fantastic. So you can still do some work in Portugal on the
Yes.
D7. That's great. Okay, fantastic. And then you mentioned, so 2 years plus 3, the language requirement is still there, as it
Absolutely.
would be for the GV.
Yes.
And then family applicants, the residence requirement, I assume that's based on all applicants or only the main applicant has to meet the residency requirements?
All of them
All.
should meet the residency requirement,
When
provided
equivalent.
they have held the residency for at least 5 years.
Okay.
Legal residency for 5 years.
Okay. And then I actually got asked this question the other day regarding the D7. You have to have a rental agreement in place. You have to have a lease agreement in place when you move over, right? So
Yes.
can you do that post-application or pre-application?
Well, you see, this rental agreement or rental arrangement will also acquire add on to your expenses, right?
Yes.
So a lot of people would say that I would like to do it post-application, but it's advisable that we do it before.
Yes.
Because it's going to be an additional supporting document for your application.
Sure.
When you are applying for the D7 visa, you have this idea in mind that you want to move to Portugal,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So the visa officers will ask like, okay, where's your document showing that you
Yes.
can move? So it's really advisable that we prepare that rental agreement before we submit the application forward.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So we mitigate that early on, which we do with most things. So
Yes.
that's fantastic.
Yes.
Another question is, again, I'm just mirroring what questions we get
Yeah,
from
for
the
sure.
GV. It's just because they tend to come up with a D7 application as well. There's obviously some restrictions in terms of, before the real estate option was taken away. Are there any restrictions in terms of where you can live on the D7? Lisbon, Porto, can you still live in those main
Yeah,
ports?
absolutely.
Okay.
You can stay anywhere. You can choose
Anywhere in
wherever you want.
Portugal?
Yeah.
Okay, so
absolutely.
no restriction. And I'm assuming that D7 would afford Schengen visa-free travel. once your residence is granted in
Yes.
Portugal.
Yes.
So as it would, so no restriction there
Yeah,
as
just
well.
to give you a little bit of how this whole D7 process would work. So basically, you would have to apply for the visa
Yeah,
from the VFS,
which is the
right?
type D Schengen.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Yes. And then once that is granted, then you'll be able to travel to Portugal.
Mm-hmm.
Within those time, like for example, let's see between 3 to 4 months,
Yes.
you would need to have an appointment with
Correct.
the immigration office called IMA.
That
or
changed.
Yeah, that changed previously. It was called SEF.
Yes.
Yes, so you will have to have an appointment
Uh-huh.
and get your biometrics done, and then obviously get the residency card.
Okay, so type D is applied for in country of residence, and residence permits applied for once entering Portugal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, that clarifies that. So we can work, which I love. It's
Yes.
passive income based, which is great. You
Yes.
can live anywhere in Portugal, which is
Yes.
fantastic.
Yes.
It's fairly expeditious, which you mentioned. You can't start a company. We'll get into that. But yeah you
Well,
were
I
going to
just want
say?
to add, because it's a process, a lot of people would say it's going to take around 6 months, but it really depends on how how quick we can get an appointment.
Sure.
You know, so it's still an appointment-based system.
Yeah.
You still have to get an appointment from VFS. You
Yes.
still have to get an appointment from IMA.
Yes.
So if we get those like quickly,
Yeah.
then I could say that it is really fast.
Yes.
It's not like as slow as the other
Yes.
process. You know?
That's a good point. So when you, and again, it's important because it's a question that does come up. When your passive income that's being generated from outside
right.
of Portugal, at the time of applying, I'm assuming that's going into a non-Portuguese bank account.
Yes. Yes.
Do you have to then recognize those funds into a Portuguese bank account once you get your residence?
Yes. So what happens? The first step before we even apply for your D-type visa from VFS is to open your bank account in Portugal.
Okay.
Right.
And
So
get your
that's-
NIF and all
and get
of
your
those.
tax number and stuff like
Yeah.
that, right? So once that's done, then we can then proceed with obviously the transfer from your non-Portuguese bank account to your Portuguese bank account to show that you have this amount of money. You have to deposit
Fantastic.
the money to your Portuguese bank account.
Which then means you essentially becoming a tax resident in Portugal.
Yes.
In
and no.
I know there's nuance to that, and we can
Yes.
address that on a case-by-case
Yeah,
basis, but
for sure.
you could possibly be falling into the Portuguese tax net. I know there's been some changes around the NHR there.
Yes.
I don't think the changes are in place yet, but it's a constant discussion. So we'd address those in the lead up and the preparation, I'm assuming. Okay. So that's the D7. That puts a nice bow around that. I think that gives us a better idea. We mentioned you can't start a company in Portugal. So
You can start, yes.
you can with a D7 as well.
Oh, no, sorry.
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
We're talking
So
about-
if you're wanting to start a company, you mentioned D2 and D8.
Yes,
For someone that wants to start a company, where does that fall in?
D2.
D2.
D2 visa.
Okay.
But it has the same threshold, I would say, the 820 per month amount
Yes.
of an income from the company you have outside Portugal, and then you're bringing it in Portugal.
Okay.
It's the same thing. It's the same process as well, just different, requirements to qualify.
Sure. So I looked into the D2 a while ago, so I have a broad understanding of the category. Obviously, you're a specialist in it, so you could probably clarify some of my questions. Around the D2, so that's with the intention to start a business in Portugal. That business doesn't necessarily, and correct me if I'm wrong, need to be operational outside of Portugal before you incorporate in Portugal, right?
Not
So
necessarily.
it doesn't follow the same lines as some of the other UK and EU options. It doesn't have to be a non-Portugal company functioning outside of Portugal. You and I discussed this before. Sometimes it's actually easier to incorporate a new business
Absolutely.
from a compliance point of view, because part of the process is drafting a business plan,
Right.
right?
Right. Yes.
Okay, so that makes it easy. And then, unlike the D7, I'm assuming you need a company bank account and a personal bank account
You
for the
would also
D2.
need both. Yes. Correct. Yes.
So, can you speak to what that? So the deposits that are going in, because I understand there's minimum deposits that go in. You're saying it's that 800 odd a month.
820. Yeah. Euros.
Now, I understand that the D2 requires that into the company bank account. There's no legislated threshold that needs to go in there, but we suggest that you transfer a minimum of 5,000 euros into that company account. Am I right?
Um,
Or
I-
wrong? Yeah.
it's so hard to explain that part.
Yes.
Sheldon,
It's a little
because
bit
it really-
ambiguous, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. So what we can do is really see what the company, the structure of the company, the type
Okay.
of business, and we'll be able to address that question.
Okay,
You know,
so we
so
can
it
assess that at business plan
Yes.
stage.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is an amount that should be transferred into, and
Well,
yes,
you have to
that
make
makes
sure that your
sense.
bank account is active, though. So you have to make sure that there is something in your bank account to make sure that it is
Company and personal.
Yes.
So the personal bank account is the one that needs to, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, you need to deposit a 12-month tranche in terms of at 800 and
820.
sorry, I keep forgetting the amount, at 820 times 12 for a year.
Well, I'll correct that. Times
Okay.
24.
Sorry,
2 years,
okay,
because
okay,
your,
okay.
your visa should be valid for 2 years. So you have to show them that you are able to support yourself when you move to Portugal
Yes.
with this validity of 2 years. So it has to be
Okay.
820 times 24.
Fantastic. Okay. And that's a lump sum deposit into your personal account.
Yes.
So that differs from the D7 in that the D7, you essentially activate the account and then recognize that as a passive income amount monthly, or is that also a bulk?
It is the same. It is the same.
And both are
process.
24
Yes.
months. Okay, I didn't know
it's the
that.
same.
Okay, so I'm learning. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so 24 months times the multiple of whatever the minimum threshold
Yes.
is, 820 euros
Yes,
a month.
perfect.
That for the D7, it also goes up per dependent.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so that's for a company. You incorporate the company before you apply for your residence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you incorporate, get the company incorporated, and then does it follow the same line as D7 in that you apply for your type D Schengen
Yes,
first?
same process.
Okay.
Will be the same process.
So application
Yeah.
process is quite similar.
Type, I mean, the visa, and then you get the residence card when you move, or when you fly to Portugal.
And same allowance in terms of dependents as well?
Yes, and the residency stay requirement, and then the citizenship requirement as well later on.
Okay. And minimum turnover for the company once incorporated?
There's no minimum turnover at the moment, and there's no specific guideline that says that you have to have a turnover.
Okay.
Well, it has to be operational, though. I mean, it has to
Yes.
have the transactions. You have to. There should be market research. There should be like
Yeah.
it should, whatever the business plan will. I mean, whatever you provide in your business plan must be fulfilled in a way.
Okay, I guess it's difficult to know how a business is going to do
Absolutely.
initially,
next
so there's a
couple.
bit of leeway there.
Yeah.
Okay, but so no minimum threshold, but it should be operational,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
And the renewal times, what does that look like? Is it also granted for an initial 2 years
Yes.
in the same way as the
Yes.
D7, with the renewal being 3 years and then PR and naturalization
Mm-hmm.
as well? Okay, so that helps. So D7 is deposit into a company account, which is dependent on what the structure of the business looks
Sorry,
like.
D2.
D2, sorry, did I say D7?
Okay.
Sorry, D2 is, unlike the D7, is a company account and a personal
Yeah.
account. A deposit amount into the company account is dependent on what that business plan looks like
Absolutely.
and what the forecasting looks like. And then the personal account follows the same at 820 times 24.
Yes.
Okay, so again, really good thresholds in terms of entering Portugal and wanting to settle there.
Yeah.
So flexibility around those two categories, allowing both retirees and business people to enter. Are you seeing good take up for the categories at Knightsbridge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am seeing. Well, the only, I would say, fallback would be the stay. Because
Yes.
sometimes it will be a little bit difficult to stay there for the six consecutive months.
Yes.
For some people.
Yes.
But I'd still say if this is really an option, especially for your children and the future of your children, I think it's still a very good option to take.
Okay. So yeah, that's, I guess, like we said at the beginning, it is for the person or the applicant that's looking to actually move to Portugal. It's not a residence by absence. All right, James. So we've heard a few changes around certain CBI programs recently. Vanuatu's been on the radar recently for specific changes. Do you want to speak to some of those changes or what clients can expect going forward? I believe it's around biometrics or what you
Yes.
do or don't have to do. So yeah.
Yeah, so basically before there was no requirement of you passing a biometric process.
Okay.
But now, any application submitted before November of this year, you won't be required to do the biometric. But after
Okay.
that, you are required to travel to Vanuatu to do the biometric.
Okay.
However,
Wow.
after talking, probably after the meetings that have been going on around, and the authorities have released a statement that there are a couple of stations they have in other countries like Brussels. In areas such as Brussels, Hong Kong, Dubai, even here in Dubai, that there are
Okay.
going to be embassies or consulate being stationed for people not being able to travel to Vanuatu.
Okay, fantastic. So
Yeah.
making it a bit easier to do those
Yes.
biometrics. I mean, yeah, a bit scary thinking of going to Vanuatu to do the biometrics in terms of travel times. But I guess moving to a biometric passport enhances the safety of the passport itself.
Absolutely,
So
I agree.
in its entirety, it's a positive thing.
It is.
Fantastic.
It is.
Okay, James, so citizenship is granted across the various programs we do. Vanuatu becoming biometric, you still get your passport granted.
Right.
The Caribbean, you get your passport granted. That's all good and well. So we hold your hand through that process. We hold your hand through that process in residence and business migration as well. I know on the business migration side of things, we tend to go with the client through that entire duration. So we'll go from residence to permanent residence or indefinite leave to remain in the UK. And we often see them right through to getting their naturalization and British or European passports. We have a similar kind of service post-citizenship as well.
Right.
So we're not
In other jurisdictions.
when it
correct,
comes to
yes.
citizenship applications. The clients continue on that journey with us post-citizenship. What sort of services do we offer there?
Well, that's a very good question, Sheldon, because a lot of people would just, maybe they don't have that much of knowledge about
Yes.
what happens. It's really good that you still have that connection, or you will have that, or you do have that connection with your country. Like, it's not enough that you have a Dominica passport.
Yes.
It's not enough that you have a St. Kitts and Nevis passport. So a lot of people would ask, like, can I get a national ID? Can I get a driving license?
Sure.
I need to apply for some other like personal purpose? Can I get a police certificate? Can I
Yes.
get them apostilled? So all these things, we do help them
Fantastic.
in getting those services done. There's also a possibility that if you or the client were like, I want to venture a business, I want to open my business
Sure.
in Dominica, for example, or St. Kitts, in other
Yes.
Caribbean jurisdiction. Yes, we do. Yes, we help.
Fantastic.
Whatever
Yeah.
is needed for you to be able to be closer to your nationality.
Your new nationality.
We do help.
And these services are becoming more common, like things like opening a business. We're seeing
Absolutely.
that more commonly done
Yeah.
in places like the Caribbean post-citizenship.
Right.
So yeah, Knightsbridge is not a passport and walk away kind of service. We're a passport and look after you thereafter kind of service.
Yes.